Welcome to the latest episode of the Wealth Mosaic in Conversation. In this episode, Stephen Wall was in conversation with NickRice, a director at Brunswick Group in New York. He is the co-author with Rudin Group CEO April Rudin of the book Wealth Management with a Difference, which was published recently. Nick tells Stephen why and how he and April wrote the book and the themes it explores, including the challenges of engaging next-generation clients, how relationship building and wealth management is changing, and how to encourage technology adoption among front office users. We hope you enjoy the podcast.
Nick, thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
It's good to see a fellow Brit here in New York City.
Absolutely, likewise.
To start off with, can you tell us a little bit about who you are, what you do, your background, how come you're in New York City, what sort of work you do in the wealth management space?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm a director at Brunswick Group here in New York. We're a consultancy focused on stakeholder engagement issues globally. I'm a member of our financial institutions group. So we advise wealth managers, fintechs, and other folks in the financial services sector on stakeholder engagement on critical issues affecting their business. I was previously at UBS Global Wealth Management as an executive director for 7.5 years, and before that I covered wealth and asset management as a journalist at FT. So I have about 20 years experience in the wealth space, and last year published a book with Wiley on the global wealth management industry and commercial opportunities in the industry with April Rudin, entitled Wealth Management with a Difference.
Super. And how did you end up in the big, wonderful city of New York?
Well, I originally moved here 22 years ago, actually for studies partly at Columbia, and then I moved back to the UK, and then I moved back here about 14 years ago, so I commute into the city from Connecticut.
Very good, very good. So the reason we're here today is really to get into the book, and the endeavour that you did with April, it's now published, is out the door. I know there's a sort of backdrop to it, there's a reason to do it. Can you tell us a little bit more about the book, why you did it, and some of the process of getting it ready for publishing?
Of course. So this is the first book that we can find that's been written on the global wealth management industry as opposed to specific aspects of it like investing in financial planning and so forth. So there really is a gap in the market. And specifically there was a gap in the market looking at commercial opportunities in the industry, how to achieve what we term client generational and business success for wealth management firms, financial advisors and providers to the industry like fintechs. And especially amidst a period of very, very significant generational change. We have younger generations, Gen X and millennials, accumulating wealth at a rapid rate. We have this intergenerational wealth transfer that's due to happen over the next 20 years. And we also have a new generation of technologies and other tools coming through, which will significantly shape the industry over the coming decades.
So there's a huge amount going on, we know that, right? And the pace of change and the dynamics of the industry are all sort of moving at a pace that perhaps the industry hadn't seen before, right? So whether the industry is ready for it or not, I mean, these are all debates that are going on. Just to go back to sort of the beginning of the process, it was obviously a co-authorship with April.
Yes.
And we know April very well.
Yes.
Can you tell us a little bit about how that came about and why you decided to do it?
Yes, absolutely. So April and I have known each other for more than 10 years. She was my source when I was at FT. I was her client when I was at UBS, and now I'm at Brunswick. We wrote this book together, albeit in a personal capacity. This is not a Brunswick Group book. We published it with Wiley, but April and I have worked very, very closely together on this. We first started talking about it to Wiley more than 2 years ago. We were very conscientious in terms of researching it properly, really getting perspectives from experts in and around the industry, more than 80 experts globally of all different types, all different levels, all different countries, all different ways of looking at this industry and how it operates. And then the writing phase probably took about a year.
Heavy endeavour, right?
Yeah,
heavy endeavour,
indeed.
Certainly outside of work,
Yeah.
right? As a personal sort of personal giving to the industry. So obviously 80 people, you've spoken a little bit about the headline themes. Were there any elements from, obviously without naming names perhaps, but any standout conversations, standout themes, standout kind of quotes that really sort of took you aback or made me think, wow, this is something that the industry really needs to take on board?
Yeah, absolutely. So there were 9 different opportunities commercially that we looked at in the industry amidst this period of generational change. The first is demographics, right? The shift in wealth towards a younger generation and that transition. In some cases, the wealth will move horizontally and then vertically down to the younger generation, but it'll get there eventually. And of course, younger generations accumulating more wealth. retirement. The retirement landscape is being reshaped by these demographic shifts. We've seen massive changes in technology. We've seen massive changes in digital. Those are two other opportunities we explore. We look at the alternative investment landscape and how that's opening up new opportunities for clients. We looked at clients looking at the purpose of their wealth, how they make an impact with their money, in some cases using philanthropy. We look at the ultra wealthy, the rise of the ultra wealthy and opportunities to serve them, clients wanting to extend their international footprint, and finally talent. Talent is absolutely going to remain at the heart of this industry, irrespective of technology shifts, and the need for firms to build the right talent, especially for this new age that we're entering, it's never been more critical.
Yeah. Can you dig a little bit deeper into that? Because talent isn't what it was before. I mean, talent is talent, but it's in different areas, isn't it? It's not necessarily relationship managers and private bankers who can take a client out and sort of schmooze, if you will, and build that relationship. There's a whole load of skill sets that are required around different client aspects, different client segments, different client needs, different technical skills that might be required in the organisation. Can you talk a little bit more about the skills and the talents that you think the industry is going to need to acquire over the course of the next 5 to 10 years?
Absolutely. So building relationships is central to this, right? It's just, to your point, the ways you build relationships with clients are changing significantly, right? So it's partly in person, it's partly about having those conversations, it's partly getting deep in with the clients and their circumstances, but it's also about building, in some cases, a digital relationship with clients and prospects through social media and so on and so forth. It's about mastering a technology skill set that advisors might not have had to deal with before, right? Particularly in the age of AI, there are certain tools which are coming available which will significantly augment the way that you can conduct business and help you automate technical administrative tasks and really free up some time for that client work. And I think those skill sets are going to become increasingly important.
I'll back that up with something that came from our event yesterday, which is controversial. There are a few controversial things in relation to where tech is taking the industry, and the problem is that financial advisors, wealth managers, private bankers, the client-facing people don't use tech, was his blanket statement. So it's like the organisation can do whatever they want to bring tech. The guy and the girl leading the client relationships do it manually, they do it traditionally. They're of a certain age in instances where they've done it that way for a long time and they just don't use tech. It's an interesting dynamic as to how the industry behaves and how it will need to evolve. We often see when we talk to clients and when we sort of see some of the studies in the market that the application or the full application of technology is never there, right? There's always a training, there's champions, there's all sorts of different things, but they still struggle with getting the end user in the organisation to actually use the tech that's available to them. So I think that's an interesting aspect of whether they really will. I mean, I think they kind of have to.
Agree. Adoption is absolutely critical
journey.
here.
Yeah.
Developing the right tech tools is only half the battle. Getting people to use them is the other half of the battle. And I think
making them usable as well is part of the journey, right?
Right, making them usable, I think trying to drive adoption by I think assuaging people's concerns to a certain extent that they're not being replaced by machines. Machines help them do their job, right? And if they want to incorporate a final manual check into processes, they can, but it does save them an enormous amount of manual time just getting to that point on the back end. And I think that's something some people underappreciate in the course of their everyday working lives.
So of those 9 chapters, I mean, they're all equally important. And probably there are other chapters. If you really wanted to, do this work again, you'd probably have other areas you want to consider, like compliance. And when we look at the industry, it's not just the traditional wealth segments that are important. It's retail wealth as well. It's like the person on the street that might not consider themselves wealthy. But when you look across the 9 chapters you covered, is there one that really stands out as like critical, or are they all of equal importance?
I think they really are all of equal importance in some ways, but I will say that tech goes across everything. We have a dedicated chapter on tech, but tech also helps power, for instance, purpose, right? So a lot of the tools that have been made available on the philanthropy side and on the sustainability side over the past 10 years have really enabled clients to understand how their underlying investments are linked to a specific purpose or a specific impact, or you've had a whole generation of philanthropy technology coming through that enables you as an individual to more easily set up a foundation or work out how you might want to use a DAF or something like that. So I think no matter where you go, technology is a central backbone and a central driver of opportunity.
Yeah, fully agreed, and we've seen that in building the directory, that actually all of the areas you've talked about and others in the industry, technology runs across every single element of it within reason.
Yep.
There are still some gaps. I remember the 3,000 firms that we have in the directory and the sort of 7,000 solutions, building it and trying to understand as much of it as we can. And there's still maybe some gaps there. But one of the things that we saw in the build of tech is the discovery of new clients, so supporting growth. That was the big gap of many of the technology firms that were around. It's now starting to be filled, mostly with AI, which is an interesting area. So I agree, it covers a lot of it. Where do you see the industry as most challenged? Where has it got its biggest issues to tackle?
I think it really is around the adoption of next generation tools and engagement with the next generation of clients, and that's really why we wrote the book. If you look structurally at the wealth picture in the US, for instance, baby boomers still control more wealth than the silent generation, Gen X, and millennials combined, which means that if you're the average advisor, you're mostly incentivized to cater to that baby boomer demographic. It's natural that a lot of your day is going to be spent dealing with that demographic and the silent generation, which is one generation older than that, right? And so you are in your day-to-day less attuned than you're probably going to have to be in 10 to 20 years to those younger generations coming through, and also towards female clients who just constitute a larger proportion of that younger generational wealth. And I think advisors need to do the groundwork and they need to do the training now so that they have the fundamentals to develop that business, even as baby boomers retire and decumulate their wealth and this wealth transition starts to kick in.
Yeah, I think in tackling the challenge, you've also talked about a huge opportunity. One of the data points yesterday, which I don't know if I'd seen the data before or heard the data, is that actually a lot of wealth will transition to female family members over the course of the next period. And that's actually the biggest group for the younger generations who will take on the wealth in the near future. And there's all the points around the next gen or those inheritors of wealth don't stay with the same relationship manager or the same institution as the previous wealth holder. So there's all sorts of things to deal with. You've touched a lot on tech and the role of tech and how it's going to be extremely important in engaging the next gen. One of the issues we see, or at least that is talked about in the industry, is that the leaders don't understand technology. They don't come from technology. They have a different background. It's been kind of a necessary evil in their organizations for them to do the business they do. It hasn't been at the forefront. Do you get the sense that the leaders of organizations now are much more aware and focused on tech than they maybe were historically?
Yes, much more focused. And I think AI has accelerated that because people understand the opportunities that AI will unleash, but also the guardrails that have to be put in place from things like a cybersecurity perspective, or just ensuring that the AI is accomplishing the right tasks in the right ways. There are a lot of opportunities and risks for leaders to manage there.
You've mentioned that the industry is now much more oriented towards tech and leaders are much better understanding. What do they kind of get to grips yet with AI? Is it kind of a part of their strategic thinking? Do they know what's going on? Or is it, we never got to do something, but we've got to figure it out too first?
Yes, I think they are coming to grips with it. And I think you see that in the development of tools internally. Looking at wealth managers and looking at their tech stack, it really is advancing very rapidly. Things like using AI to surface ideas for clients, financial planning, ideas for clients' portfolios, using it to surface ideas from emails about how to action what a client is asking for. And this is going to save an enormous amount of time, and it's already able to be integrated into client workflows right now. Alternative investments is another good example, where you used to just be able to have one single portfolio overview for a client, stocks and bonds. Now you can increasingly get an overview in a platform which will cater to everything with various sort of plugins and additions and so forth. Yeah. So you're seeing this move very rapidly.
And I think, having asked about AI, it's the perfect time to ask you one final question, right? Well, what does this all mean for the future of the wealth management industry? Do you have a sort of view of where it's going to be in the next 5 to 10 years? From whatever angle, whether it's the clients, the use of tools, the shape of the industry in terms of the players. Do you have a bit of a future view that you can give to us?
No, absolutely. I think consolidation is going to be a theme. I think you're seeing that particularly with some private equity backed players coming in and consolidating various practices. And I think there are a lot of different drivers for that. But partly it is the need for best practices in the wealth management business, particularly when technology is changing so fast. In order to have the right technology, you need to have the right level of technology spend. And it's become harder to do that as a smaller shop. And so I think, as advisors retire and as they pass their practices on, consolidation is looking like a particularly interesting option.
Great. Well, Nick, it's a fascinating time to be in the wealth industry here in the US, in Europe, in Asia, and elsewhere. So thanks for your time today. Much appreciated.
Thank you, Stephen.
Thank you for joining us once again for the Wealth Mosaic in Conversation. If you're enjoying the podcast, please subscribe on whatever podcast platform you're using. If you'd like to be featured on the podcast, email Stephen at thewealthmosaic.com. See you next week for more conversations.